All right, so let's go over some of this final review here. Um, Remember for number one, a 1/2 power is the same thing as a square root. All right, so this is asking the question, what is the square root of 64, which is 8. So your answer should be 8. You can also take that, you can type it into your graphing calculator, 64 raised to the power of 1/2, and then that will give you the answer. Number two, you're simplifying square roots. So take 32, write the prime factorization of 32, which is 2 and a 16. 16 is a 2 and an 8, and then an 8, I'll break this up. An 8 is 3 2s as well. So you have 5 2s. Okay, so, and you have 5 x's, and you have 4 y's. Okay, so when we simplify square roots, you're going to circle groups of 2. All right, you might know this is prison break. Doing prison break, circle groups of 2. And from each group of 2, one number will die, and the other one will escape prison. Right, so that one dies, that one escapes. So what you'll notice with the numbers is that you have 2 2s that escape jail. So in your final answer, you should have 4, because you're going to multiply those 2 2s back together. Out of the x's, if you have 5 x's here, you're going to be able to circle 2 groups of x's, and there's going to be 1 left over. So the 2 groups of x's, you'll have 2 come out from those groups. Out of your 4 y's, you'll have exactly 2 groups. And then what's left inside jail is this 2 right here that didn't get circled, and then the leftover x that would not have gotten circled. So if you have to, you can write out 5 x's like this. You can circle your groups of 2, and you can see how you have that 1 left over that never gets circled. So that means that he should be left in jail. So you should have a 2x left inside. So there's number 2. Number 3, I guess one thing to make sure that you do is you have a 16 and a 2 multiplied on the top, so multiply those together to get 32 first. And then you're going to use your rules of your exponent rules, which is to subtract the powers. So you're going to take the top number, subtract the bottom number. So you should have, well, if you want to simplify this fraction, both can be divided by 4. So that should be 8 over 3. You should have 2 x's left on top, and you should have 2 y's left on bottom. So if you do 2 minus 4 here for the y's, you get a negative 2. And when you have negative powers, those go in the denominator. Number 4, you're going to bring this power of 3 in first. You're kind of distributing this 3 because it is getting multiplied. However, when you distribute it to the 3, you have 3 to the power of 3. So 3 to the power of 3 is 27, and then you're multiplying it for the variables. And then the last thing you want to do is multiply 2 times 27. That would make 54. Square roots, all right. Number 5 here, you're going to just be distributing inside here. So the square root of 7 times the square root of 7 is the square root of 7 times 7 like this. And then 5 times the square root of 7 is just 5 square root of 7. So you can't combine those together because one is under a square root and the other one's not. And the square root of 7 times 7 is 49, but that would just simplify to a 7 because you'd have 1 escape, 1 dies, no jail left. And you cannot simplify 5 root 7, so there's your answer there. Fully factor, I don't think we have to go over the factoring ones. Number 7 is going to be slide and divide, so just keep that in mind because you can't divide out of 4, even if you try. Number 8, which equation matches this graph? Might be easiest to just use a graphing calculator, type these into the graph, the y equals, and look at the table or look at the graph. It's definitely not number 4 because number 4 is a power of 4, and a power of 4 looks a little bit different than the graph that we see there. It's not going to be B because B has a negative out front, and a negative out front means that the graph would actually look like, upside down of what it actually looks like. And so you're kind of stuck between C and A. It should be A. All right, number 9. What is the domain? So the domain of something that has a square root in it focuses on the numbers that are in the square root. So the 6 out there does not affect the domain. The 6 out there would affect the range. So this would move the range up to 6. So the range would be y is greater than or equal to 6 because of the 6. However, the 5, if you're looking at a graph, the minus 5, sorry about that, the minus 5 that's inside the square root will move this graph to the right 5 units. And so here's what the graph will look like, and this will be starting at 5. So you can see the domain or the possible x values. There's nothing left of 5. Everything is to the right of 5. And so this would be x is greater than or equal to 5. All right, so only the number 5 and things greater than that are in the domain. Anything less than that would not be in the domain. So, if you take a final exam and you have a question that says, which of the following numbers is not in the domain? All right, you're looking for a number that makes this square root a negative. Square root a negative means it's not in the domain. All right, so if you can find the number that makes u square root a negative, that would be the number that would not be in the domain, because that would cause a problem. All right, number 10, solving systems of equations. Use your calculator, use elimination method, use substitution method, whatever you have to do. 11 is writing inequalities. Okay, so you have R and T for radio R, radio T. You want to spend no more than 4,000, so that's radio R plus radio T can be no more than 4,000. So that's a less than or equal to. Radio R must be at least twice. So at least means greater than or equal to. Twice means 2 times the price of T. And then the other two inequalities, so both radios must be more than 500. That means that R is more than 500. Actually, it says more than, so we don't need an equal to underneath that symbol, just a regular greater than. And T is also greater than 500. So there's your systems of inequalities there. And you'll just be having to write the system. You won't have to do any solving or graphing. Number 2, what are the solutions? Use the quadratic formula. All right, that might be something good if you have a cheat sheet or a note card to use for your final. That might be something good to write on, because it won't be given to you on the final. You have to write it down on your card. How many real roots does this function have? It has 2, because it has 2 spots where it crosses the x-axis. So the answer is 2. It doesn't ask for what are the roots. It just says how many are there. So the answer is 2. If it asked me what the roots were, I would put down the numbers that these x-intercepts are at, which is just slightly below 1 and slightly above -1. Finding the vertex down here, that's going to be a common question. You're going to have to use the formula -b over 2a. And in this case, I'll do the first one here, and then part B, I'll just assume that if you can do A, you can do B. So -b over 2a would make this actually a positive 8, because our formula uses a negative, and the 8 is already negative, so that's a double negative there, over 2 times x. So x is 4. And so that at least tells us that we have 4 comma something. And to find the something, to find the y that we need yet for our ordered pair, we have to plug 4 back into the function. So y equals 4 plugged in for x. And so then we have to figure this out. So this would be 16 minus 32 plus 7. So I think that's -9. And so your vertex should be 4, -9. Number 15 is multiple choice. Which one of these best represented by the table? Take your x value, plug it in for the x's, and figure out which one of these matches perfectly. So if you take x is 0 and you plug it into the first one, 0 to the 4th power. 0 to the 4th power is the number 0. However, this has a 1, so that is not the answer, because you cannot plug 0 in for x and get 1. Actually, I think B is the answer, so I could kind of go through and prove that the other two are wrong. So C, if you plug a 0 in, again, if you plug a 0 in for x, you get 4 times 0. That is 0. It says that if I plug a 0 in, I should get 1, so that's not true. And the same thing happens actually in part D. So 4 times 0 to the 3rd is 0. And again, this tells me it should be 1, so it's not D. So actually, B is the only one in which the first point's even going to work. But what you should do is you should go out here, make sure that if I plug a 1 in, I get a 4. If I plug a 2 in, I get a 16, and so on and so forth. So it looks like B there is your correct answer. 16, you got to make the bases match. All right. You could take 64, and 64 is the same thing as 4 to the 3rd power. All right, and now what we have is our bases are matching, so we just have to simplify the right side here. We would have to distribute our 3 in here. Okay, and now our bases match completely. We're simplified, so we're going to go ahead and set our exponents equal to each other. So we just go over here, take our exponents, make sure the exponents are equal to each other, and then we solve this. All right, so we would subtract your 3 over, subtract your 2 over, what do you get? -10 equals -2x, so it should be 5. So you get x is 5. Sorry, I'm rushing through this a little bit. Number 17, I'm not going to go through the whole question, but you do have to get rid of that 4 first. So you should be multiplying both sides by 4. If you multiply the left side by 4, you're going to get 36x. If you multiply the right side by 4, you just cancel out the one on the bottom. So all you have left is a 3x plus 11. And you guys can solve that from there. 18. X and y intercepts. Here's the y-intercept. Write that point down. And then there are 3 x-intercepts there, there, and there. Write those 3 down as an ordered pair. Write an equation that has roots of -3 and +2. The easiest way to do this is if I know that a root is -3, then I know x plus 3 is a factor. If I know that one of the answers is 2, then I know that x minus 2 is also a factor. And so you can just go ahead and do box method, FOIL. You can multiply these two factors together, which should be x squared plus x minus 6. And you have now made an equation that has -3 and +2 as solutions by working backwards. Number 20, greatest common factor. You can use your calculator under the math. I think it's under math. Let's look at my calculator. Math tab. And then if you go over to NUM, which is one spot to the right, and you go the whole way down to the bottom of that list, you will find GCD. All right. GCD stands for greatest common divisor, but it's basically doing the same thing as the greatest common factor. So if you have trouble finding the greatest common factor of numbers, you can go click that GCD button. You can type a 32, a comma, and a 24 and hit enter. And that should give you your GCF, which I believe is an 8. Yeah, so it's like 8 is that. And then for the powers or for the variables, you always take the smallest power. So they both have an m. What's the least amount? The least amount is the one that's right there. And then they both have an n, and the least amount of n's that they have is a 2, because this one is 2 and the other one is 3, and 2 is the smallest. All square roots, multiplying square roots. We take the numbers that are in the front, we multiply them together. So 2 times 5 is 10. And then we take everything under the square root and we multiply it all together. So we have 18. I'll just put the 18 and the 2 up front. So we have an 18 here, a 2 here. We have x to the 4th. We have x to the 3rd. And we have a y. So all I did was take everything that was under the square root and just smush it under one big square root. And now we got a lot of simplifying to do. So this is a 10. 18 times 2 is 36. For our variables, we have a power and we have a base to a base here. So we're going to be adding these to make them 7. And then you would just use your simplifying steps from there. So square root of 36 is 6. So a 6 is going to come out front with my 10. For the x to the 7th power, you can make 3 groups. But you're going to have 1 left over. And for the y, you're not going to be able to make any groups. You're going to have left inside. So the last thing to do would be take the 10 and 6 and make them 60. For number 22, you cannot add square roots together unless you have the same number under the square root. So we want to treat that like terms. This 2 times the square root of 25, 125, we cannot combine it with 5 right now because 125 and 5 are not the same numbers. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this square root of 125 and we're going to simplify it. All right, so the square root, so 125 is, if you do the prime factorization there, it's 5 times 5 times 5. We're going to have a group of 5s there that's going to simplify. One's going to come out front, one's going to die. And so 2 square root of 25 is going to simplify to 10 square root of 5s. Now I have something that I can combine together with my 3 root 5. All right, so remember I still have a 3 root 5. I just rewrote this and simplified it. So I'm still adding 3 root 5s to this. Now I can add them together. I have square root 5s. All right, I have 10 square root 5s here. I have 3 square root 5s here. I'm going to add them together. 10 plus 3 is 13. So I now have 13 square root 5s. And coming up the home stretch here, write the equations of the lines that are graphed below in slope-intercept form. Again, this whole final is going to be multiple choice. So you're going to be able to pick which one's correct. Y-intercept of -1. Whoops, slope of down to right 3, so slope is -2/3. So that one should look like -2/3 x minus 1. And then this one has a up 1 over 2, so a slope of a half. And its y-intercept is a fraction. It's halfway between 2 and 3. So you could put 2 1/2, or as a mixed fraction, that's 5/2. And so there's your answer for that one. And then the last one, you are factoring both the top and the bottom. So this should be -4 and +3. Numbers that multiply to -12 and add to -1. And then on the bottom, you have x minus 4 and x minus 2. And so what you see here is that you get these x minus 4s that cancel each other out. And so your final simplified answer is just what is left here when that happens. So that's going to be an x plus 3 over x minus 2. That's going to wrap this video up. That should be the entire final review there. Good luck.